Hello and welcome to another class guide for patch 8.1.5, and this time we are going to be looking at the Space Chicken, the Boomkin or the Balance Druid. Now this is a fairly new spec that I'm playing at the moment with Druid. I'm usually a Guardian Druid, but I'm having lots of fun running around, especially with the new Zandalari Druid form, playing Boomkin. I'm finding it a lot of fun. It's great for raids, it's great for Mythic Plus, it brings a whole load of utility with it, and I'm really enjoying it. It's great at single target damage and some priority target damage. It's lackluster in AoE at the moment. You need around 7 targets or more before it's really start valuable, but there's some great abilities that the Druid brings with it for Mythic Plus. So we're going to go over that in just a second. But first of all, it is a ranged spellcaster. It uses the Fury of Elune. You see the Sunfires, the Moonfires come down. They have some very iconic spells, and like I said, there's a lot of utility with it. So first of all then, let's look at some of the talents that you are typically going to be wanting to run as a Balanced Druid. This is the setup that I typically use, and there are some minor changes that I make dependent on what I'm doing. So the first one then is going to be Force of Nature. This is a great ability on a 1-minute cooldown which summons 3 treants for 10 seconds, which immediately taunts the target and the enemies in the targeted area, and it basically holds aggro and gives you a DPS boost. This is great in Mythic Plus, especially on necrotic weeks. If your tank is taking a high amount of stacks of necrotic, you can pop your treant and it will immediately take all the aggro, allowing your tank to run away and drop the necrotic stacks. You want to be using this ideally just after your incarnation if you take it. And again, it is a good damage increase and again, very useful in Mythic Plus. The next one you're going to want to take is Wild Charge. This has different abilities dependent on what form you are in. If you're in Moonkin, then it will do a bit of a disengage style effect like a hunter. If you are in cat form, you can use it to leap behind an enemy. It helps you skip mobs in dungeons. Again, really good. Bear form, you charge to an enemy. And travel form, it allows you to leap forward 20 yards, similar to the cat form. Obviously in cat form you can use this while in stealth. So again, a really useful ability in Mythic Plus. The next one at level 45, you are going to want to take Resto Affinity. Again, one of the great things about Balanced Druid is the ability to have access to these heals. So if you take the Resto Affinity, it will give you Azera's Gift, which will heal you for 3% of your maximum health every 5 seconds. Or it will, if you're at full health, it heals somebody else in your party as well. It gives you access to Rejuvenation, Swift Mend, and Wild Growth. In Mythic Plus, this is really useful. If the tank is about to go down, you can pop Swift Mend on them. You can Wild Growth the group in bursting weeks, for example, just to help your healer out. Again, so very useful. It might bring your DPS down, but if it makes your time in keys easier, then it is well worth taking. Typhoon is a good choice here. It essentially blasts the targets in front of you and it knocks them back and it dazes them for 6 seconds. You can use it in all forms and it will interrupt most spellcasts. So again, it is access to an interrupt, because the other interrupt we have is on a 1-minute cooldown, which we'll come on to in just a minute. So Typhoon is good. You can also have a lot of fun with this in Battlegrounds. You can knock people off edges quite high up. You might want to consider looking at the other two, which is Mighty Bash, which is a stun, a 5-second stun on a 50-second cooldown, or Mass Entanglement. It roots all enemies and the target within 15 yards in place for 30 seconds. This is very useful on fights like Mechatork, for example. You can get a DK or somebody else to pull the spark bots into one central location, and then as a Balanced Druid, you can pop Mass Entanglement and keep them locked down in one place. Into row 75 then, you generally want to be taking Incarnation, Chosen of Elune. It increases your damage of all of your spells by 25% and gives you 15% haste. It does last for 30 seconds, and again, you can shapeshift in and out of this. I am pretty much always taking this. One thing you can do, which I've only just really learned as I've started progressing through higher keys, is if you use this just before the key goes in, then it will reset the cooldown of Incarnation, but you will still have a short period of time of Incarn up. It does give you astral power when you use this as well. So again, very, very useful. Pop it just as the key goes in, so it resets the cooldown, and then allows you to start the dungeon with this buff active. The other one that you might want to consider taking is Starlord, where Star Surge and Starfall grant you 3% haste for 20 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. It doesn't refresh the duration like it says there on the tooltip, but again, you can get 9% haste up to 20 seconds, depending on which spell you're using. But typically, you're going to want to be taking Incarnation in this row. Level 90 then, I take Twin Moons. It increases the damage of Moonfire by 10%, and it also hits another nearby enemy within 15 yards. If you're going to be multi-dotting, again, this is really, really good, and it enables you to do it quicker, and it will increase your damage. So if there are high levels of movement, again, it will help you out because this is an instant cast ability, Moonfire, so you can be casting this on the move. The next one you might want to consider taking is Stellar Flare. This is another dot that you can use. It burns the target for astral damage and then for an additional amount of damage over 24 seconds, and it generates you some astral power. It is another dot that you can manage, so you can have essentially Moonfire, Stellar Flare and Sunfire upon a target at the same time. But typically speaking, I run with Twin Moons. The next one then, in the last row, I am currently taking that Fury of Elune, which is a 1-minute cooldown ability, and it calls down a beam of celestial energy that follows the enemy, dealing damage over time to all nearby targets. I'm pretty much taking this because I like the look of it. I think it's cool. You have this massive beam come down, and like I say, it follows all of the enemies. So it is a talent well worth taking. It is a damage, a DPS increase essentially if you're taking this, and it will also generate astral power for you over its duration, which is really, really good. Another one that you might want to consider is Shooting Stars. So Moonfire and Sunfire damage over time is a chance to cool down a falling star. You don't really need to think about this. It is a passive ability. So again, it is a damage increase. It is entirely up to you what you go for. I just like Fury of Elune. I find it helps me out in M+. And like I said, I think it looks cool. And for me, playing this game is all about having fun. And it is more fun when your abilities look better, in my opinion. So they are typically the talents I run and I find do me well in all aspects of the game. So on to your spells and abilities themselves then. You have Bark Skin, which is your defensive cooldown, the 1-minute cooldown, and essentially it reduces all damage you take by 20%, and it will also stop any damage from delaying your spell cast. Very, very useful, and you should be using this on cooldown when needed. You've got Dash, which is a sprint-like ability essentially. It pops you into cat form and it increases your speed by 60%. Entangling Roots, this is where one of the iconic druid spells, and roots come up from the ground and lock your enemy down in one place. If any damage is applied to that target though, it does cancel that ability. We've already spoken about Force of Nature and Fury of Elune. You have a Taunt ability, because as a druid you can move into bear form if you are taking high amounts of damage. You'll see people moving into bear form in PvP, for instance. You can also use it in raids and dungeons. If your tank is taking lots of damage, or if he dies, for instance, you can quickly pop into bear form and taunt the target and hope that your healer can keep you alive. Hibernate forces the enemy target to sleep for up to 40 seconds. And any damage will awaken the target. You can only use this on one target at a time, but it does only work on beasts and dragonkin, so it is fairly limited in its usage. Let's talk about Incarnation, because we didn't cover that in too much detail. So this is where you will get a super empowered Moonkin form, and it will increase your damage by 25%, and it gives you that extra haste. Utilised along with some other potential trinkets that increase your haste, then you can get a high amount of spells out in a short period of time. And you want to be getting your Star Surges, which we're going to talk about in just a second, out, and your empowered, excuse me, your empowered Solar Wraths and Lunar Strikes out in that time, that window as well. Innovate, another iconic Druid cooldown. This will give a friendly healer the amount of time, which is 12 seconds, and it will allow them to cast spells for free. It won't cost them any mana for 12 seconds. So when they are either low on mana, or if you know that there is going to be a healing intensive fight coming up, you can give this to your healer straight away, and they will be very, very grateful to you. Lunar Strike, it calls down a strike of lunar energy, causing damage to the target and also damage to other enemies within 8 yards. This is going to be a spell that you are casting fairly often, and it will be at various times of the fight. It does get empowered as well by your Star Surge, and generally speaking, you can tell when this happens in your UI. If you're using the Blizzard interface, then it is highlighted so you know which of your spells are empowered and you should be casting. Mangle is another bear ability. So again, you'll need this on your action bars when you are in bear form. Moonfire is an instant cast ability, so it can be used on the move, and it will burn the enemy for some arcane damage, and then it does a lot of damage over time, and is something that you should be absolutely focused on maintaining throughout the entire fight. You want to be keeping this on the enemies that you're facing. If you are up against multiple enemies, you can apply this to more than one, and if you've taken the Twin Moons ability, it will apply it to 2 enemies every time you use it. Moonkin form, obviously you're going to be wanting to be in Moonkin all of the time while you are in fights. It increases the damage of all your spells by 10%, and it also increases your armor by 125%. You can't be polymorphed while in Moonkin form either, so you want to be in this all the time. It also has the chance to make your next Lunar Strike instant cast, and again a little icon will appear on the screen so you'll know if that's happened. You can then cast Lunar Strike instantly and on the move. Prowl is a cat ability. It is essentially the stealth for rogues. You want to be using this in and out of dungeons when you want to sneak past mobs, or when you're out questing. Stealth or Prowl is very, very useful. Another iconic Druid ability then is the Rebirth ability, which is a battle res. If anybody dies in the party, you can return them to life in combat with 100% health and 20% mana. You can use this either to get somebody back up into a fight, or if you are wiping on the boss, then you can pop this on one of your other healers before you die. They don't accept it until everybody else does. They can then use it and res the entire raid without having to run back through the raid. Regrowth and Rejuvenation are your healing spells, which you get access to if you take the Resto Affinity. You have some instant cast ones like Rejuvenation, and that is a heal over time ability. It will heal them for 21,000 health over 15 seconds. And you also have Regrowth, which is a short cast ability. It heals them for 18,000 and then another 5,000 over 12 seconds. You can use Regrowth whilst in Moonkin form. Rejuvenation, on the other hand, will take you out of Moonkin form, so you just need to remember to move back into Moonkin before you carry on DPSing. You then have Remove Corruption, which is a cleanse type ability, and it removes all curse and poison effects. So it doesn't do them all, but it is another useful ability for you to be using in dungeons when needed. Revive, your typical bring them back to life after they are dead outside of combat. Shred, a cat ability. which if you are going to be in cat form, sorry, then you can use this. But as Moonkins, we typically don't stay in that. That's more for when you are healing and you are cat weaving. Solar Beam. This is one of the only interrupts that you have, and if you don't take Typhoon or Mighty Bash, then it will be the only interrupt that you have. It is on a long cooldown. It's a minute long cooldown. However, it is an 8-second interrupt, and it's where you see the big yellow lights come from the sky, and it will silence everybody in that beam for 8 seconds. Really, really useful, but it is something that you need to be thinking about when in Mythic Plus, because it is on a long cooldown. Solar Wrath is a short cast ability, and it hurls a ball of solar energy at the target, dealing a small amount of damage, and it is going to be one of the abilities that you are going to be casting most often. Soothe. Soothes the target, dispelling all enrage effects. This is another useful talent to bring to Mythic Plus keys on Enrage Week. So when your group is in a dungeon and it's Enrage Week and the mobs get to 30% health, you can soothe the hard-hitting mobs with this, which will remove the enrage effect, making your tank and healers' lives a lot easier. Starfall is the AoE ability for Moonkin. At this moment in time, it is fairly useful on anything that has less than 7 enemies. So I really wouldn't be using this unless there are 7 targets in that location. You need to have 50 astral power, and it is an instant cast ability. You can put 2 Starfalls down at the same time. If you have 100 astral power, you can use it one after the other. But like I said, generally speaking, unless there's a lot of enemies in the target area, you don't want to be using this, and you just want to be focusing on your normal rotation. Star Surge. This is probably the hardest hitting ability and is where most of your damage will come from. It is an instant cast ability that takes 40 astral power, and it launches a surge of stellar energy at the target, dealing 24,000 astral damage. It will also grant you lunar and solar empowerment. So this is what I was talking about before. After you've cast Star Surge, your Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath abilities will then become empowered, and you want to be making sure that you are casting them as soon as possible, as they do have their damage increased when empowered. Sunfire is another instant ability. A quick beam of solar light burns the enemy for 2,000 nature damage, and then an additional 22,000-ish damage over 18 seconds. And it will also apply to all enemies within 11 yards as well. So what you want to be doing is using, on the way up to the pack, you want to be using Moonfire and multi-dotting all of the enemies in the area, and then once they are within 11 yards of each other and the tank has bundled them up, you pop Sunfire, and then the dot will be applied to all of the enemies in that area. This is a great ability to be spamming whilst on the move if you haven't got anything, any astral power for your Star Surge. But again, you want to be using this as often as possible and making sure that you maintain the dot on the enemy as much as possible. Swift Mend you will get if you have the Resto affinity, and it instantly heals for 40,000. So this is great to be used on a tank or on yourself or on anybody that needs it in a Mythic Plus to help your healer out. Again, they will be much appreciated. Travel Form. Dependent on what race you are, you will appear in a different way. With the New Zandalari Druid, it is a cool raptor style effect, but this essentially is your mount. You don't need to mount up when you are on a Druid because you have access to the travel form, and when you are in a flying zone like I am in now, you will turn into like the Pterodax, and you can fly to your heart's content as a cool little Pterodax, which I think is pretty cool. Typhoon we've spoken about already. Wild Charge, Wild Growth, again, we've already spoken about. So onto some passive abilities then. Astral Influence. This will increase the range of all your abilities by 5 yards. It speaks for itself. Eclipse. Lunar Strike has a 20% chance to grant you Solar Empowerment, and Solar Wrath has a 20% chance to grant you Lunar Empowerment. So again, just like with Star Surge, okay, you have a 20% chance of activating your empowered abilities just by using those abilities as well. This is where it can get a bit tricky when you are learning to play Balance Druid because you're unsure of which ones to be casting, but generally speaking, if something is empowered, you want to be casting it. Empowerments, so this is why it's important. So when you Star Surge, your Lunar and Solar Empowerments are activated. Lunar Empowerment increases the damage of your next Lunar Strike by 47%, and it also reduces its cast time by 15%. So it makes it quicker to cast and more powerful. With Solar Empowerment, your next Solar Wrath will explode for an additional 47% of its damage to all nearby enemies, and again, it makes it a shorter cast. You can accumulate 3 of each empowerment. So in theory, you can have 6 spells empowered to use. So with the Solar Empowerment, it makes it an AoE style attack because its damage is cast on enemies within a certain area. And the Lunar Empowerment, obviously, it just hits a lot harder. So again, you just need to be watching which ones are empowered and casting them to make sure that you're getting the full benefit from those. Starlight is your mastery, and it increases Moonfire, Sunfire, Star Surge, and Starfall's damage. Excuse me. And it also increases the damage effects of Lunar Empowerment and Solar Empowerment by an additional 27%. This will obviously go up or down dependent on where your mastery is. So they are the abilities and the talents then that you're going to be looking at taking as a Balance Druid. So let's just have a quick rundown of any potential Azerite traits you want to be looking for. Now, because I've started playing this, I haven't exactly got the best talents, the Azerite traits available, but I will just call some of them out as we go through. So this one here is a talent, an Azerite trait, sorry, which you absolutely want to be looking for, and that is Streaking Stars. So while Celestial Alignment is active, which I will talk about in just a minute, your damaging spells cast a Streaking Star, dealing an additional 2,928 damage when they are not a repeat of the previous ability. So what this is saying is when you cast a spell different to the last one you cast, if you have Celestial Alignment activated, a Streaking Star will come from the sky and hit the enemy. This is well worth taking. It does a high amount of your damage in dungeons and raids, and all you need to do is just watch for the Celestial Alignment to be activated, which is fairly easy to do because it is highlighted on your screen and your character, and then just cast an ability that was different to the last one. So essentially, if you cast Lunar Strike and then cast Solar Wrath, Streaking Star will proc. Another Azerite trait that you want to be looking for is this one here, Arcanic Pulsar. This increases the damage that Star Surge does by 1,647, and it will gain you Celestial Alignment after you have cast 9 Star Surges. So it doesn't need to be 9 Star Surges in a row. You can obviously cast other abilities in between, but as soon as you cast your 9th Star Surge, which I can see on my weak aura when it is active, it will count up 1 to 9. You will then gain a mini incarnation, essentially, a little window of Celestial Alignment for 6 seconds, which increases your damage. It is a mini incarnation ability, and this is when your Streaking Star ability, Azerite trait, will then kick in as well. So the last Azerite trait, which I don't believe I have yet, which I would like to get, is Treacherous Covenant. And what Treacherous Covenant does is it will increase your damage when you are above 50% health. So it's an intellect boost that you will gain when you are over 50% health. However, when you drop below 20% health, you will also take 15% additional damage. So it is a bit of risk in taking that one, but generally speaking, as a Balance Druid, because we do typically have a bit of a tankier health pool than other DPS. We typically don't sit in that range anyway, and you also have access to your heals if you need them to get you above that 20% health mark. So you will typically find that Treacherous Covenant is most beneficial to you. So they're the 3 Azerite traits which I would recommend going after. So onto the rotation itself. It is a fairly straightforward rotation. However, what you need to bear in mind is you need to be monitoring the situation throughout the fight. Because of your utility, you need to be looking at what else is going on and help you make decisions at the right time. So typically speaking, with the Balance Druid rotation, if it is a raid boss pull, what I will typically do is wait for the pull timer to commence, and then when it gets to 2 seconds, I will then start casting Solar Wrath. The reason why I do this is because of the cast time being 1.2 seconds, and because of the travel time of the ability, it won't hit the boss until the tank has pulled. So you will be safe to do that. After that has happened, I will then move into dotting up the mobs. So as you can see there, because I've got the Twin Moon ability, 2 of the training dummies that you can see in front of you will be dotted up. And depending on how many mobs there are, you might just need to cast Moonfire a couple of times. Once they have all been dotted up, you then use Sunfire, and you can see by looking at my UI here that all of them have got the dot activated on them. And all you need to do throughout the fight is just maintain those dots. So when it gets low, again, just cast Sunfire, and it will do that. The same with your Moonfire. Once you've dotted up all the enemies, you then want to go into your rotation. And as you can see here, through my weak auras and my UI, my Lunar Strike has become empowered. You can also see that I have above 50 astral power, which means I have Star Surge available to me. So I will be casting that and then moving back into my Lunar Strikes and Solar Wraths. You don't want to be capping 100 astral power. So as soon as you get up to that 50 mark, you want to be looking at using your Star Surge. So that is pretty much the rotation. It is balancing the dots. It is casting your Solar Wrath, your Lunar Strike, your Star Surges, and making sure that any other additional abilities that you've taken are being used as well. So Fury of the Loon, for instance, is something that I would use. That is your typical rotation. When it comes to burst cooldown, using your burst DPS and using your cooldowns, use your Incarnation and pop your Force of Nature Treants. That will generate you a load of astral power to allow you to go into casting Star Surges, Solar Wraths, and then your Lunar Strikes. The rotation really is quite simple once you get used to it. The difficulty is where do you use your utility? So if somebody is dropping low on health, do you need to pop out of Moonkin form and heal them? If somebody's died, do you need to be using your battle res? Is the tank taking too much aggro and needs to kite them because it's necrotic weak? Okay, do you use your treants? And you will only get that through practicing and putting yourself in different situations. But essentially, that is the rotation. It is a lot of fun to play. You're not going to be the top DPS. However, in single target damage, you are going to be up there. Very, very much so. In our raids, our Balance Druid is always one of the top DPS in single target damage. It is just when it comes to AoE situations and there are less than 7 targets is where we begin to suffer. In terms of stat priority then for a Balanced Druid, the priority is Intellect first, then Haste, then Mastery, then Crit, and then Versatility. You want to be looking at Intellect for all of your gear essentially, because that increases your spell power, meaning your damage, and your haste you want to be focusing on as well because it will shorten the cooldown and the cast times and so on. So you want to be focusing on that. In terms of enchants and gems, you want to use potentially 1 Kraken's Eye for your intellect, and then the rest you want to be using Quick Owl's Eye to increase your haste on your rings. So there you go, that is pretty much the class guide for Balance Druid for patch 8.1.5. I am fairly new to this class myself, however I am enjoying it. It's a lot of fun, and it isn't just your typical stand there and bash a load of buttons. There are other things that you need to be thinking about, and you are definitely someone that can help in making the key times a lot shorter, especially in this expansion. So let me know what you think. If you liked the video, please leave me a like. If you didn't, then dislike the hell out of it. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I've got some more class guides coming up in the near future, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.